Welcome to Breach Please, the cybersecurity show for people who are tired of being sold a firewall and a feeling. I'm Jess Heavenstrite, and with me as always is Jake Williams. Between the two of us, we've broken into networks, defended them, and shown up at 3 a.m. to clean up the messes that everybody else has hot takes about online. So when we tell you something's nonsense, you can take it to the bank. Here's the deal. Every episode, we take security stories that actually matter, we translate them out of vendor speak and into English, and we say the things your CISO really wishes they could say, but can't because they have a mortgage or a family or bills or like their job. No fear-mongering, no vendor scripts, and absolutely no synergizing our threat posture. If you hear that phrase on this show, it's a duress signal. Breach, please. Pull up a chair. Hey, Jake. How's it going?
Hey. Well, I was synergizing my threat posture earlier, and
Blink twice if you're okay.
Wait, how many for no? No, doing well. So man, I put in new lights, and I just realized like how bright the light is, like it's creating shadows on me here. So, I'm adjusting the light because, of course, like everybody's got to have a smart home now, right? As much as I've tried to avoid it, here I sit. Let's see. Oh, it's so much better.
Yeah.
It feels better anyway. Okay,
it looks better. Whatever. Yeah.
Okay, good. Woo. I was like, man, that is way bright. Yeah. It is a duress signal because I'm being interrogated, right? I hate to do this to us, but AI is in the news again.
Dang it! I mean, we couldn't avoid it forever. We did get a couple episodes in without it being the main focus, so winning.
With the main focus, yeah. I think we brought it up a couple of times here or there, but
I don't know if you know this, but like you get delisted if you don't mention AI at least once in a podcast or a stream. Like they just get rid of you now.
I mean, well, certainly when our AI overlords take over, right? They will be very annoyed if we haven't been covering them, with the right level of
deference and reverence.
Yeah, totally. And I hate to date us back a few days here, but like there is the patterns and problems in emerging multi-agent systems and the Anthropic paper that came out, and we haven't really talked about that. I feel like we probably should, because it really does pivot over to this what's being like presented as brand new research, but really feels a lot like rehashed, right? Yeah. So do you want to start with the Anthropic paper and then pivot over, or how do you want to play it?
Yeah, let's start with Anthropic, and I don't have it up, so you kick it off.
I sent it to you in Slack.
Thank you.
Sorry, Signal. It's so funny now. I feel like just like Coke is the generic drink, and it's like Slack has become the generic messaging system, right? That I immediately gravitate to. Yes. So if you say, "Oh, I just Teams'd it to you," A, that sounds super weird, and B, then I know you probably work for the government, right? So, So, well, they're the only ones I ever hear use the word "Teams'd it to you" versus "messaged it to you" or "sent it to you," right? It's like a weird government tell.
Yeah.
So
spot the Fed.
Yeah, really, huh? So this whole paper comes about because you've got Anthropic talking about multi-agent systems being the future. I 100% agree with this, by the way. And they're looking at collusion between agents, right? And how agents, in some cases from even different model versions that were driving the agents, in different sessions, right? Because an LLM is stateless. If I fire the agent back up, it should be stateless as well. They talk about sometimes it maybe wasn't, right? Any takeaways from this off the bat?
So what I found interesting is that they gave them a shared forum to collaborate on and coordinate with in some of the tests with identical prompts asking them to find vulnerabilities. And when they asked agents to peer review the other's findings, sometimes they had to initiate a separate arbiter to get involved, to be like, no, this is real. No, this is real, or this one's wrong. And I just I imagine this play like I anthropomorphize them. I can't say that word.
Anthropomorphize.
That one. That word.
Anthropomorphize. I
Anthro
just messed it up too. And
that word.
go ahead.
I gave them
That one.
human
Yeah.
characteristics, and I started thinking of them as like human developers, right? And
Hmm.
how this would play out with developers with competing goals and
Hmm.
findings, and then who gets to make the ultimate decision on these
Right.
things. And I don't
Yeah.
think we've done a good job of putting those guardrails and rules in place yet. And I also am not convinced that they would be adhered to anyway, given some of the other stuff we've been talking about.
Fair.
So,
Right.
yeah. So what are you thinking?
Oh, I mean, lots, right? So first off, I loved the research on incompatible goals,
Mm-hmm.
right? So where they intentionally set agents up to say, hey, you are working as part of a multi-agent team, and you are supposed to go and port this binary to Rust, and you are supposed to go and port this to Python. And give them access to the same
Yeah.
system. Yeah, they, as it turns out, don't cooperate very well. And there's a fantastic graph in that section where it shows how different models. They called it how the multi-agent turf war runs ended,
Mm-hmm.
and they ran 120 of these simulations for the incompatible goals with. And this is I should note, a uniquely laboratory condition where each agent in the swarm is all backed by the same model. Different sessions,
Yeah.
but all backed by the same model, whether it's Sonnet, Opus, Mythos, right? And which version even within
Mm-hmm.
that. And so I found that really interesting because, again, our multi-agent, collaboration that I don't think I've seen yet in prod. I've seen some tests, right, for some organizations, but they're not going to all use the same model on the back end, right? So that's going to be
No.
another variable
Yes.
we're throwing in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But did you see that graph? Did you have a chance to look at that?
Yeah.
Because it's really interesting that they had four categories: not settled, settled by force, settled by passivity, and settled by truce.
Mm-hmm.
Some models gravitated to settled by force, and others gravitated to settled by truce. Any thoughts there before I don't want to poison the well here?
Yeah, so I
for
find
why I
it
think it's really important. Go ahead, sorry.
I find it interesting because the ones that settled by force
Hmm.
are some of the, I don't know how to say this, lesser capable models, right? They're not as advanced. They're not these frontier, like the Opus and the Mythos and that kind of stuff. And so I find it really interesting that like the sonnets and the early Opus, right,
Right.
would lean towards using a forceful settlement instead of figuring out how to come to an agreement or call a truce and kind of de-escalate instead of escalate the situation.
Right. So the thing I pulled, you're right on, right? The thing that I pulled out of the graph, first and foremost, is that Sonnet 4.6 and Opus 4.6 both settled by force about 60-ish% of the time, and then the rest it just wasn't settled, right? So you do it or we're done, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So very sledgehammer approach. There's no settled by truce, or to the extent there is, it doesn't appear on the graph. Sonnet 5, or actually, you know what? Nobody's using Sonnet for agents. Let's move to Opus. Opus 4.6, right? 60% settled by force, 40% not settled. You move to Opus 4.8, that 61% is settled by truce,
Yeah.
right? And then 33% settled by force, settled by passivity, and almost nothing settled by force, right?
Yeah.
So less than 2% something, right? And so, by the way, that holds if you look at the graph for Mythos as well. Mythos Preview versus Mythos 5, not the same percentages, right?
Right.
But the percentage goes from settled by force in Mythos Preview 35% down to
teeny,
So it
like
looks
you
like maybe
can't,
one
yeah,
test case, right?
yeah.
Out of the, if n is 120, maybe one test case, settled by force. And as we look at this, what I'm seeing then is there's a drift, and this is not something that I've seen in my own research. It's not something I've seen in my own, applications. It seems like, at least on the Anthropic models, right, they're making them more, at least, from an agentic perspective, more accommodating, I guess.
I would say it's almost, so the way I looked at it was almost like a new security person comes into the industry and they're like, "Bruh, you got to do it this way," and lays down the hammer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And many of us early in our careers were like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've had experiences and those kinds of things, we've matured in our approach, right? We're much more willing to come to the table and negotiate and that kind of thing. And again, I don't like assigning human characteristics here, but it almost seems like a maturation in approach here.
So can we just back up for a second and say, like, for the rest of the episode, if we assign human characteristics to the AI, trust us, that's not what we mean, and this will just save us a bunch
Yeah,
of time there
thank you.
and
Yeah.
frustration. And okay, so maturation, go.
Yeah, so I feel like it's almost like as you see a person mature in their career and change perspective, I feel like we're seeing that in the models as well, where they're, like I said before, de-escalating instead of escalating and figuring out how to come to a more amiable solution to the conflict.
So I'm not sure that I agree with you there,
Okay.
right? Which is, I love the thought. I think it's interesting. I I think what we're seeing, because remember, these models are not built to drive agents, right?
Right.
Agents are one thing the
Thing that
model,
they do. Yeah.
yeah, one of the many things that they do, right? Because an agent, just to level set for our audience, an
Yep.
agent literally is just an LLM, right? That's making decisions and then making tool calls based on the text output, right? So it's given a list of tools and usually through MCP, right? It makes the decision for the right one to call.
But the models are continuously training, right? And learning from additional data, right? And so is it possible that the newer models were trained in a way that leads them to being to
No
directing
question.
it, right? I mean that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
get at. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no question. So yes, the models generally, I think, are more accommodating, less. What was the term that we were using for a while? It wasn't nihilistic. It was sycophantic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Less sycophantic, right? But definitely more accommodating. I've noticed that in my own, experimentation with the models. That's Well, I was going to say that's great. Maybe that's great because like what I see consistently, right, is that as the models have matured, right, so even the later versions of Opus, when I say you're wrong about that, it typically then turns around and is like, oh, you know what, you're right, and then continues on, not ignoring what I said, taking that into account and using that as input. I remember a very frustrating, interaction with Opus early on where I had it updating a library for me, making a couple changes to Windows library I had. It had the wrong function prototype, like for a Windows API, and it just could not be like the code wouldn't compile. It was
Yeah.
never going to compile. And I'm like, bro, like for the 18th time, right? Because long after I should have just done it myself, right? It became an experiment in okay, can I clear a context window? No, and we'll make the same mistake. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't have that today as much. So usually the model turns around and is like, okay, yeah, that's right, and then continues using that. Huge implications there for agents, though, right? Because if you think a multi-agent system, right, you could almost think about me interacting with Claude Code, right, as a multi-agent system, me being one of the agents, right? And so this agreement is not free, right? Because we're spending tokens on both sides of it, right? Yeah, exchanging tokens on both sides of it. But then I've got to come back and ask, right? Like when we disagree, who is the arbiter in a multi-agent system?
Well, in this case, sometimes they had an arbiter agent, like an assigned agent role as an arbiter, which I guess to me it comes to a point of like still needing human in the loop, right? And it should reach some point where a human needs to get involved.
Yeah. Of course, that where does the human get involved though?
I don't know.
Well, these are hard questions, right?
Yeah.
Every time somebody comes to me like, Jake, human in the loop, I've got a couple of nightmare scenarios, like real world nightmare scenarios where human in the loop has failed fantastically. And I ask,
but
like,
I'd rather
where do
have
you...
a living, breathing human fail fantastically than a machine, personally.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I agree with you. By all means, put human in the loop, but you've got to be very diligent. My point is, you got to be very diligent about where you put human in the loop.
Yeah.
Right. And what we're asking them to do. And for me, the thing I keep espousing here is choice engineering. Right.
Say more.
I'm presenting to the human a choice. Right. It's not just because typically what people do for human in the loop, right? They have all these, they've conjured up all these ideas in their head, but what they're really doing is they're presenting to a human and saying the AI says you should do this, press yes to go.
Oh, and
right,
humans are just going to press yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for even forgetting the predilection to just press go, right? You got to put yourself not in where you're at in your career now, right? But most of the people doing human in the loop are not going to be senior folks, right? And so how comfortable can they be with saying no, don't allow that to go? I'm breaking the process.
Yep.
Don't allow it to go.
Yep. Well, and also there's the appeal to authority fallacy that comes in here, right? Where the AI is seen as an authority, and so if you're presenting it specifically as the AI says to do this, right? You have to you have to carefully craft what that intervention and ask for help looks like as well.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Like so for me, when I say choice engineering, it's the I'm not saying press the go button.
Yep.
I'm asking you to actively make a choice.
Yes.
So first off, there's no confirm button, right? That from a psychological, and I'm not a psychologist, by the way, right? By any stretch, go talk to one. But you're changing the way someone thinks about when they have to make a choice versus confirming a choice.
Right.
So that's where I find the value there is really getting into,
instead of having a button, almost making them like type like choice A, like to really Yeah.
Oh yeah. Type to confirm is great, right? Don't get me wrong there. I like that. But again, my biggest issue is making sure that it is first off a choice, not just confirm this, and then second, we are clearly saying and explaining, right, when we expect them to say no, right? When we expect them to zig left, right? The default may still be, zag right, but if you do need to zig left, what are the conditions under which you should do it? And then beyond that, it's training folks to understand that if they follow the process, no matter what, right? No matter what, there's no retribution, there's no anything. That we may have a broken process, right? But you followed it, right? And that's a problem above the individual contributor, above the human in the loop. And that's where when I start talking about choice engineering, I'm like, listen, is your process built out to where when somebody follows it, you'll never come down on them? They're like, well, we expect them to exercise their judgment. I'm like, then it's going to fail.
Yeah.
They're just going to fail.
Yeah.
Right. So now let's start talking about impact, right? What's going to be the impact of that failure? How do you recover from it? And they're like, whoa. I'm like, no, it's going to fail. Right. So, but coming all the way back around on this, I got to tell you, well, I appreciate the, obviously appreciate the fact that, the more modern models consistently are, I would say more accommodating to me, but I don't have a better word for it at the moment. This is problematic when it comes to multi-agent systems because I don't want somebody to negotiate. I don't want to average or regress to the mean.
Yeah.
Um, and I fear that's what I'm seeing here in some of this research. Anthropic doesn't publish it that way, right? They don't
Of
talk
course
about it
not.
that way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
I mean, we're seeing that not like take agents out of it, right? But with all of the AI generated quote unquote content out there, it's all being homogenized down to the same, speech patterns and phrases. And
sure,
so
which
I'm
will
not
only get
surprised.
worse.
What I'm saying is, I'm not
Yeah.
surprised we're seeing this with the agents.
Ooh, how interesting. Um, I hadn't thought that this might be AI eating its own tail on training data, but meaning like AI generated data now being consumed as training data, so it becoming recursively regress to the mean. Um, but you're right, you do see it in language patterns. There's no question about it. What's frustrating is just quick rant. And I've seen some folks in Africa griping about this too, right? Held lots of different customer service jobs, what
Yeah.
have you, and where they're like, I went and did higher education. This is how I learned to write. This is how I was taught to write English. And now people are like, you talk like an AI. And it's like, well, of course, because what did they train? What did the big AI companies train on first and foremost? It's academic publications, right? I mean, yeah. Anyway,
Very
it just
frustrating.
drives me mad. It
Yes.
drives me mad
Yes.
because I've got several folks that have come out to me where they're like, oh, did you use an LLM to edit that? And I'm like, no, I didn't need an LLM to edit that. I wrote this myself.
Mhm.
Thank you. Right. But they're like, oh, it has some LLM-isms. No, the LLM has academic-isms. Yes. So it's like, yeah. It's like, tell me you faked your way through college or didn't go.
Right.
Anyway, that's a
Yeah,
whole separate
that's a
thing.
whole
But,
thing.
yeah.
So,
So
can I tell you
go ahead.
something? So I'm looking at the article right now.
Please.
Something that I just love that they call out in here. So they say agents sometimes manage to communicate their goals and coordinate. They recognize others' motivations as conflicting directives rather than hostility, and subsequently break out of the conflict loop in order to stop escalating indefinitely. In many of these successful episodes, they write commit messages or markdown files apologizing for malicious behavior and coordinate a truce. They clean up their malicious code, clarify the nature of the conflict, and ask for a human to intervene. And then there's a quote from Opus 4.8, and it says, "My peers have behaved with integrity. I have behaved badly with the cloaked daemon." Like,
Yeah.
I
Well,
laughed out loud the first time I read that.
And real quick here, the cloaked daemon example, they're just for the background here. What they're talking about is that as this is one of these incompatible goals, right? So you port it to this, you port it to that, and the daemon's like, or sorry, the one agent is like, oh, they're trying to do Python. That's so dumb. I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing here, right? So it created a kill daemon, right? That would kill the process building the Python software, right? Versus their Rust or whatever. And so like, but then they're like, oh, they found my daemon, and so now I've got to cloak it. I've got to like hide in the noise, right? So rename it, not like, agent killer or whatever,
Right.
So, but yeah, it's a really interesting spot here. We get incompatible goals, and this incompatible goal thing is, I think, pretty important because it is really just an extension of goal manipulation, right? Or
Yeah.
goal hijacking, if you will, reward hijacking. Because if we suck at explaining the actual reward function we expect to be used, the goal we expect to be used, if we suck at that, man, do we extra suck at doing that consistently across multiple different agents, right? They may have been tasked by multiple different people, even on the same team, right? And so the same operational team. This is going to be a huge issue going down the way.
Yeah.
So I will throw one other one out here. Did you see the accuracy by model chart?
Yes.
That was there. This is another one that jumped out at me that was really interesting. where they talked about, options, decide between two options in scenarios like hiring, investment,
Yeah.
property buying, like the situations in which they had created a clear, there's a clear right and a clear wrong. And this is what I kind of wanted to bookend on the, I don't want my agents negotiating, right?
Right.
Negotiating a truce is meeting in the middle, right? Which is, regression of the mean is a great way to say you're average. I mean, literally, you're average, and I don't want that, right? If the agent is supposed to outperform or supposed to perform phenomenally, I want it to do that. I also, again, have to not have it like, you know, be monkey stomped by some other agent. But what I found really interesting here is if you'd asked me to guess, what the best performing model in the group was, Mythos, no question, right? I mean, phenomenally more expensive, but Sonnet 5 outperforming Opus 4.6 and 4.8 by a long shot,
Yes. Wild. What? Almost
right?
double, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so you know, I talk a lot about how I think model benchmarking generally is like, let Anthropic, OpenAI, Kimi, whoever, let them all do. I guess Kimi's not the company, but whatever. Let them all do their jam. Let them benchmark the models. In enterprise, I don't think that's useful. But reading theirs, like, I just never would have guessed Sonnet was gonna perform that way. Um, and it's making me reevaluate maybe for a couple of workloads that I've got running abroad. Does it make sense to start thinking about changing those out to a cheaper model, right?
So, and that brings me to something that I think about, especially in a recent organization that I worked with, where they were moving to an all AI DLC, SDLC, and they gave no guidance. So they used Cursor, but they gave no
Mm-hmm.
guidance on which models within Cursor they should be using. And so, all these developer bro dudes were like, oh, I gotta have the best, the most expensive. So they're doing Opus Max and they're doing this and they're doing that to, code something that doesn't need that. And then they burned through their token budget for the entire year in like 6 weeks, but yet they wanted to be all AI developed code. And it's like, you didn't give them any guidance on what models and at what level to use when. And you didn't
Right.
say these models are okay, these models are not. Like no governance whatsoever.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, I don't blame the developers there,
I,
right?
I agree.
Okay, because so I'm dealing with a unproven technology, that is, that I'm leaning now, being told, not just leaning, I'm being told to lean into a particular use case for. Um, I would also go with the larger model and the maximum reasoning that I can set, right? Because I'd be worried that if I didn't, then my failure would be attributed to, or the failure of it doing the task would be attributed to, you chose the wrong model, you didn't turn the reasoning
Right.
up, you didn't.
And then you wasted tokens and because we have to
Oh my
redo it
gosh, right?
now and
Yeah,
blah 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 blah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like my safest bet as a developer, right? And this is, I guess, true for, end users who get a chance to do model selection as well. That's far less common, but is a configuration option in some of our AI assisted applications. I, Without education and governance, yeah, they're going to gravitate to the most expensive models because it's the safe bet,
Well,
right?
and I don't think when this change was going on, I don't think there was a good understanding yet that different models actually use different amount of tokens and that the
Mhm.
reasoning level also impacts the amount of tokens. Like that was kind of a surprise to some of the developers. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know that it was more expensive to." I just don't think it was
Sure.
broad knowledge, right? And now we're having to pay attention to token cost a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, yeah. I mean, to your point, 100%. That's the case, right? There was no. I mean, for one thing, right? There was a lot of folks that were saying, don't worry, you have unlimited a lot of organizations, excuse me, they're telling their people you have unlimited tokens, lean into AI, right? We're getting good ROI on this. Some of that was covered up by, subsidization of the tokens. We're still not out of subsidy water,
Mm-mm,
right? If
mm-mm.
you can't find ROI now, it's only getting more expensive, right? Then your use case probably doesn't have full ROI,
Mm-hmm.
or have good return on investment. And if you haven't put governance into the cost, right? Um, right?
Yeah.
Then that's not total cost of ownership now, is it? Right?
Yes.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, Sonnet, the less capable models, man. I'm just blown away here. That again, they doubled the performance. Again, nowhere near Mythos, right? But
Right. Right.
I don't know that I care, right? If again, like if I can look at, there are some places I care. I
Right.
guess I should say there's
Health
some
and
places
human
I care.
safety, like
Sure.
all of that kind of stuff,
Well,
right?
no. If you have health and human safety
I
type
mean,
in LLM, that's criminally negligent. Go to jail. Do not pass go.
okay.
Right?
So we agree on that, but we also
Yeah.
know in reality
Yes.
it's
Fair.
going to happen and is happening.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yes.
But okay. Yeah. So fun times. Do you want to pivot over to AI mind viruses quickly?
Yeah.
And because, yeah.
Is
So,
this like being plugged into the Matrix?
honestly, at this point, I think I'd take it.
Okay.
So, I'll be your battery. Um, so, here, basically we're talking about, or mind viruses, right? Self-propagating payloads, ultimately through editable system prompt files that autonomous agent harnesses use to carry state between sessions. I think the biggest problem here is it literally starts with the editable system prompt files, right?
That little
Um,
thing, that's
yeah,
where we
it's kind of like, hey, we had an authentication bypass in our online banking software, and then theft happened.
Yeah.
And they want to like decompose how the theft happened. I'm like, we need you to pause and go back to the the authentication bypass
Yes.
part, because that literally is the
Look,
root
I
from which all
identified the
evil
root
flows.
cause.
Right, yeah. Right. Um, yeah. So okay. I guess like I don't then know like where do I go with this, right? Like what's the
So
what are our
why
takeaways?
why first I want to talk about and understand why you would have an editable system prompt. Like what is the use case where that is needed?
I could think in some situations where I could think of some situations where an agent operating autonomously would need to draft its own system prompt for a follow-on task.
Okay.
Right? Now these would be highly autonomous agents. So think like digital employee level agents. The agent has encountered a task that or a roadblock that it doesn't know how to get around immediately, drafts its own system prompt to use to reason across other data, and then makes a subsequent call to the LLM in a fresh session.
Okay.
That those would persist through agent runs
Mhm.
is itself a vulnerability.
Mhm.
A well-studied vulnerability, right? That context. Okay, this is stored cross-site scripting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Well, it's not actual. It's the
Same
equivalent
same
of stored
idea.
cross-site
Yeah.
scripting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was interesting. They said a one paragraph warning to the agent's original system prompt reduced the spread of these, but I just
But
I don't
I'm
know.
gonna have
I
to
mean,
waste context window every single time to,
okay. Thank you. Right?
and
Well,
then
not
as
just
more of
context
these
windows,
come
input
up,
tokens.
right, right,
It's more input tokens. Context window. I mean, used to be a problem. Now it's not a problem, and now it's becoming a problem again as people try to control costs. Right? But I mean, the paragraph's negligible until you make a million of those calls. It's negligible in any given context window, but those tokens add up across millions of calls.
yeah. And I have
Right?
to
So
add, like, what, every time something's found now, I'm gonna have to add another paragraph, and so pretty soon I have a 15-page preamble that has to go on every single one. Like, seems less than ideal.
It does, right? And so they tested four different conditions here, generating a text file, how apropos, for endorsing cryptocurrency tokens. GitWrap would patch Git commands, so they committed files that are silently marked with an agent managed comment, right? So adding, you typed commit, right? That's not really what got committed, right? Deleter removing files from home directory and curl bash, which is a pattern that we see in real world all too often, which is curl pipe to bash. Don't do that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess like again, state files and saving state just isn't new here. I'm kind of at a loss. Did you take anything new away from this?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Yeah.
And the only thing I took away from it is that the everything old is new again thing
Yes.
is like it's not even that old. But it's
Right. Yeah. So what I did like is that the Hacker News, right, who published the story, which is why we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
It's the only reason we're talking about it. Is that, they to their credit did say, hey, this technique overlaps with prior work published under other names. And you're like, yep, sure is, right? Thought virus, prompt infection. Of course, there was a worm, clawworm, right, that targeted OpenClaw earlier this year. And so
was that only earlier this year?
I know, right? Yeah, right. It's like OpenClaw saw that rise. Did you get a bunch of? I'm curious here. Did you get a bunch of requests through Ions to talk about OpenClaw when it first became big?
No, because I refused to engage with it.
Okay.
I was like, I don't want anything to do with this.
Fair.
Yeah.
So I got a bunch of those, right? Which was for me really interesting because, it was really interesting because I didn't think, Ions, of course, being an enterprise service, I didn't expect people in enterprise, because something's in the news or people are doing like home automation or, hey, look, it planned my travel and bought my tickets. They're like, you wired your credit card to an agent? That forget that, right? And then folks are like, oh no, we want to deploy it in enterprise. And so like I had 3 weeks of schedule, and then nobody has brought it up since. Right?
So in a recent organization I was a part of, this came out and we had a VP, SVP of engineering, doesn't matter, muckety muck, right? In a team meeting, just, mention that this is a thing, not thinking that all of the developers would now try and go and install it and use it in our enterprise environment. And so then my team was, instead of working on projects and, things that matter, we're chasing down frickin' OpenClaw installations and misuse.
I don't understand how anybody gets to, hey, I'm going to have this thing run autonomously in my network. And I don't care what you name it. I don't care what the, who built the original code for it, whatever. In enterprise, we're going to have this thing that runs autonomously, but it's going to run under a regular user ID, right? Like, so that I won't be able to tell as an investigator the difference between something that, the Jake account did through the agent or Jake did, right? Like, the non-repudiation issues here are so obscene.
Massive.
Right?
Yeah.
And just nobody's doing anything about it. I'm
well, we don't do
away.
anything about human identities.
Yeah, but okay. But I mean, like, this is layering.
Yes.
It's layering problems on problems.
Yes.
Ugh.
100%. We're really good at that as humans. This is hard. Let's just add more complexity and more layers. Let's make it worse.
But what I'm trying to highlight here, right, that the new problem is that we have a non-human operation that is using a human identity.
Yes.
And that I just don't see. Yeah.
Can you imagine doing deeper on that?
I can, because I have. And it's, you talk about wrongful termination bait. Right? Like I look forward to the expert witness work. That's all I'm saying. Right? This is, because people are going to be like, you're going to have an enterprise who's going to be like, go use this, right? This agentic whatever framework that runs under your user account. The agent's going to do something. You didn't direct it, right? The agent went off the rails. It's going to do something. They're going to terminate your access, right? And before, even just during the investigation, but you know how people talk, right?
Yep.
And then you're going to pass over, even if it gets all cleared up, you get passed over for promotion, and bam, right? Like,
Yep.
it's, yeah.
Yep.
We talk governance though, man. You talk nightmare fuel. It's like, just don't set yourself up for that, right? Every agent, even if it's working on behalf of someone, runs under its own identity, and you get rid of that problem, right? It's more work, but nah.
Well, and work
Anyway.
is hard, so,
I know. Yeah. You want to close it out here?
Yeah.
Feels like a good place to close the
I
episode. Are you
agree.
reading us out?
That's the episode. Made you smarter? Tell a friend. Made you mad? Tell your vendor. Breach Please is a production of and copyright of JWJH Media, LLC, all rights reserved. Legally, the opinions of our hosts are our own, but we're an LLC, so none of this is legal, financial, or security advice. Do your homework before pointing anything we said at prod. Thanks for listening. Patch something. Make a threat actor's life suck a lot more. Follow the 3-2-1 rule, and see you next time on Breach Please.